everyone is on a journey of self-realization, whether they realize it or not. Who am I? Who is this consciousness that is waking up every single morning? Who is this consciousness that is making me unique, different than any other human in this world?
To face your own true self, the darkness in yourself, as well as the light in yourself. Meditation or spirituality is an experiment where you yourself are the subject of that experiment, and the scientist, and the apparatus is your body and your mind. Self-realization starts with...
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wakeful Being podcast. I'm your host, Anshita Jain, and our purpose here is to serve you on your growth journey to empower you to create more happiness, joy, and abundance from inside and out. On today's episode, we will be diving into another beautiful conversation with Guru Shailesh of Divine Heart Center. Guru Shailesh is a yogic grandmaster who has achieved high states of self-realization and enlightenment. And essentially, we will be discussing the topic of self-realization with him today. You see, very few people in this world can actually explain this topic of self-realization, because in order to explain it, you have to be experiencing high states of it in order to shed light and to give it justice. Before we jump into this conversation, I want to preface it with some basics around self-realization, some building blocks that can help us understand the context of this conversation a bit better. So you might ask, why is this topic relevant to myself? Why is this topic relevant to anyone who is not a monk or a mystic or, super into meditation or yoga? You see, the thing is that everyone is on a journey of self-realization, whether they realize it or not. Yoga says that the reason why we don't have clarity, the reason why majority of people in this world are confused on what to do next, or confused about what their purpose is, or just simply dissatisfied with different aspects of their life. That is there because we don't truly know our true self. You see, if I ask you, who are you? Who is Anshita? Anshita is not a collection of my quirks and my personality. It's not what I do for a living. It's not how much money I make, my social status, or this collection of identities that I've collected over my life, right? Who am I? That is way beyond even my own name. Who is this consciousness that is waking up every single morning? Who is this consciousness that is making me unique, making me different than any other human in this world? Where does this consciousness come from when I'm born, and where does it go after I die? You see, the reason that we have fleeting happiness, the reason we are confused, the reason we have dissatisfaction in our life is because we don't truly know our core essence. We don't know who we are deep down on the inside, beyond the identities that we have collected. So why is it that we don't know our true self? I mean, we spend so much time with ourselves, right? What is keeping us from realizing our soul, from realizing the core essence of who we truly are, what this consciousness is? You see, it's essentially, we have this veil of illusion around us, right? This veil of Maya. And that Maya illusion essentially manifests within our consciousness as our ego. And this ego keeps us from understanding our true essence. It keeps us wrapped up in overthinking, in attachments, in desires, in greed, in jealousy. It keeps us wrapped up in this material world. And because we're so wrapped up, we're failing to understand the core essence of our unlimited, unconditional, loving nature. We're failing to understand our true essence of divinity, our true essence that is connected with the higher self, with the universe, with God. Meditation is the tool that we use in order to self-study so that we can slowly but surely understand our true self. We can understand our soul. The point is to understand who you are for yourself. Meditation doesn't require you to believe in a God. All meditation asks of you is to believe in your own experience. And it says to experience the truth for yourself. Don't believe what someone else has said thousands of years ago. Rather, yoga says that, like, here, this is the realization that has been found true by thousands of yogis over thousands of years. Now, you can go ahead and search for the truth yourself. And ultimately, you're going to end up coming to the same realization. See, this concept of self-realization is as ancient as time. Thousands of years ago, yogis wrote books called the Vedas. And essentially, those are the original yogic texts. And you will find so much profound truths within those texts. You will find crazy things about the speed of light, about the distance from the earth to the sun, right? Written in these texts about psychology, things that our modern society is just now understanding. So how did these yogis even understand those things 10,000 years ago? The way that happened is because they realized their true self, their true essence. And in doing so, they realized the true essence of the external world. You see, this path of self-realization is not just for mystics and yogis and monks in the Himalayas, right? In fact, everyday people like you and I who are living these modern lives and who are striving to be better versions of ourselves, to create more abundance, to be good to ourselves and to our society, we are all on this journey of self-realization. You see, every human being is actually on this journey of knowing their true self. It's just that different people are on different levels of this evolution. And the more practice, the more self-study that one does, the faster they grow in this evolution. I hope that sheds some basic introductory around the concept of self-realization before we dive into this beautiful conversation with Shailesh. I hope this conversation ignites this fire within you to truly know your true self, to embody this everlasting peace and love that only we can cultivate from inside and out. Let's go ahead and jump into this conversation.
This big keyword, self-realization. A lot of people, first of all, don't even know what that is, might have not even heard of it, or it just feels like something so far-fetched that they have never even thought about looking into it. Knowing you and experiencing your energy and vibrations, I think people tend to realize how self-realized you are and how connected to the spirit and the source that you are, and you're able to speak directly from that source. It's not like you're reading from a book. You're not conveying these ideas from something that you read, but it's things that you've actually realized yourself. And you're able to do that because you are self-realized. What is, self-realization?
So first of all, I'll clarify that, this is a very advanced topic, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The topics that we're discussing thus far are kind of bottom up, how do you start a practice and so on. If I were to explain self-realization, then that's the end of all pursuits, right? Self-realization cannot be explained in words, and self-realization is never complete. So I am self-realized to the extent that I have understood some part of the nature of God, right? And then I'll give you a very simple definition of what self-realization is, but ultimately, self-realization starts with knowing your immediate purpose in life, your earth, which means purpose, meaning of life. Then it graduates to knowing your ultimate purpose of life, the paramarth. What is the paramarth? Ultimate, supreme meaning of your life. And in that, there are different stages, right? We talked about Hamsa, Paramhansa, Siddha, which means you become, you have proven to yourself, right? The clearest definition of self-realization is a self-realized person is able to make contact with God at will anytime. And there's no lesser definition of self-realization. If you can make contact, direct contact with God at will, at any time, that is the first yardstick of self-realization from a spiritual perspective. Okay, so that is self-realization.
Wow. That's beautiful. I can't imagine making contact with God at any moment of time at will.
Many gurus, many masters roaming around, they can, call themselves self-realized, but ultimately the first question you have to ask, you have to be at a point to be able to ask that question. This is a doctorate level question. If you're in a kindergarten asking that question, that can be considered a little bit presumptuous, right? But if you're serious and if you've pursued spirituality seriously, then you have to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
The question is very simple. Self-realization means contact with God.
Right. And that is also where that contact with God is also where that eternal joy comes, right? Can we have eternal joy without that constant contact, unity with God?
You can have glimpses of it, but you will not have the constant contact with God unless you have experienced the love aspect of God. So when I talked about consciousness, existence, consciousness, and bliss, Sat, Chit, and Anand, the Anand part of it, the joy that permeates, yes, you can get in touch with it a little bit sooner. You will have glimpses on it because it's kind of an encouragement also.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there is a macrocosmic realization of God that is everywhere. That is called self-realization. But in the microcosm of your own body, we have these chakras, right? So when your heart chakra opens up from a spiritual perspective, there will be an onset of unconditional love and joy. So that joy, actually, it's a good thing. You start feeling that joy much sooner in the process, but it'll still be an oscillating joy. It'll come and go, come and go, come and go. It'll become eternal or unceasing only when you have made the first direct contact, for sure. So from that perspective, you're right that the eternal joy will come when you have made the first contact, but you'll start seeing glimpses. God plays hide and seek with us to kind of test us, to let us work out our own karma so that our focus, our drive, our desire is refined, that it is looking for God and God alone, so that when the true form of God is realized, we are not, a severe karmic reaction does not happen, right? For our own benefit. In 100 watts of electric bulb, if we put 200 watts of power, it will just blow up, right? So God's power is, even though it's full of love, where it comes into you, a lot of cleansing, a lot of catharsis happens. You have to face your own true self, the darkness in yourself, as well as the light in yourself. And not only darkness in your own self, you get an unbiased glimpse of the rights and wrongs of your family, of your near and dear ones, of your society, of your country, and you have to come face to face with it. It's your report card, right? And imagine if somebody gave us our true report card, like a camera that was always with us and was always taking a picture whenever we are doing things, even when we're thinking nobody's watching us. And now this report card is handed over to you across lifetimes.
Yeah.
That can be an overwhelming feeling for somebody. So therefore, self-realization is given to us in small drips, right? Doses. It's like a microdosing of sorts, but in a sattvic way, in a good way. So in microdoses, this realization comes. One such microdose is the onset of unconditional, soothing love that just without any cause, in a spontaneous fashion, starts arising in your being.
Yeah. Very beautiful. And maybe, we have to be also compassionate with ourselves, with the fact that maybe it's not this life that you reach that. It's like we're all on the same spiritual journey, heading in the same direction, but everyone's on a different stage. And there's no judgment in that hierarchy, because ultimately we're all going to reach the same goal.
Absolutely, 100% agree. In fact, because of that fear of judgment, people start magnifying or over-glorifying their spiritual achievement, whereas it's not a race.
Right.
See, the difference between self-realization of Brahma or the Absolute and a corporate ladder is this. A CEO of a company, let's say company A, cannot make you a CEO till they step down.
Correct.
Whereas according to the yogic scriptures, according to the bhakti yoga scriptures, Hindu scriptures, God is infinite, such that if from that infinity, if infinity is taken away, infinity still remains. That means God doesn't get diminished in any way. So God has the power, Brahma has the power that it can make the devotee like Brahma and yet not lose its stature. That's the difference between material joy and the spiritual joy. That there is no competition. There can be many, many, many God people in God consciousness.
Infinite infinities.
Right? Correct. So it's not like if you realize, then there is one slot taking. No.
Right.
God wants us all to realize.
Yeah.
At the same time, everybody will have a different journey because of the nature, the variability in the karma. And that variability can also call us chaos, but it's not chaos because there's a method to it. But when you look at it collectively and you look at it, throngs of people, hundreds of millions of people taking birth and going through these life processes and then dying, and then the souls evolving and then coming back, some souls going into higher place, other souls going into lower place, animals, dogs becoming early humans and early humans turning into animals because of their karma, early, late humans becoming angels, and then angels further, ascending, or angels coming back after working out their past karma from the heavens down to the earth, behaving angel-like, and they're not able to make sense out of this world. So when you look at all of the cycle, it will appear as if it's chaos. It's just too much for the mind. When Arjuna had this divine vision of Krishna was his friend, somebody who was having lunch with him, going out for, shopping with him. I'm just creating a visual here.
It's like a fast friend.
Correct, a fast friend. But then he sees the Virat Roop of Krishna, the full form of Krishna. And Arjuna is fearful of fighting this war. And Krishna is basically showing that, like you, hundreds of wars are being fought. People were entering from one mouth of Krishna, into their death. And then they will be born out. Several creations were being created, destroyed, forming new planets were being formed. And all of that he got in one vision. And imagine if that happened to you. Arjuna was a great warrior, and with that vision, even the hair on his hands, on his body stood up.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about goosebump, it was like a mega goosebump event, right? Porcupine, right? So, and he starts praying, Lord, I just can't stand this divine vision of yours. Just come back to your form as my friend, as my Sakha.
Yeah.
Sakha is basically a close, intimate friend. And that's what then Krishna assumes his form as a human being. Right, so realization, you're right, is everybody who is sincerely following the path of self-realization will ultimately find realization.
Yeah.
You don't have to belittle the definition of realization to convince yourself. Just be assured that if you started the journey, practically work out your karma, work hard. Karmic law says that no good karma goes waste. You'll always be result, even if there is resistance. Sooner or later, you will get the result of your karma. So that assurance is already there. So why be afraid? And keep working, and more and more pathways will open up. And then some of us will find self-realization because we have been at it for lifetimes, and therefore some of us were born with an innate desire to find God, and we found the right path.
Yeah.
And we're working some last vestiges of karma. And we have to just make sure that we are not taking on new karma by mistake. And we're also making sure that we don't develop a sense of superiority or just become kind of too satisfied with where we are, but use this extra energy to help others. Right. And if we keep doing that, all of us, number one, will become happier. Right? Self-realization comes later. Eventually, you'll become happier little by little. Ultimately, one thing you're assured of is that if you spend 10, 12 years genuinely in the spiritual field, you will not die unhappy. Okay, you will not die without, even if you die unhappy, there'll be a strong spiritual purpose behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of saints, sages, dervishes growing up in India. You hear stories and see, saints just living a very humble life. Some of them are sick, wearing torn clothes, but they're full of happiness. They're not sorry about their sickness.
Yeah.
So when you are pursuing a higher purpose, that suffering also gives you joy, also gives you that power. It gives you the sense, this warmth that you are actually, it is suffering. And yeah, you have to take your medicine and you don't become disconnected with it. But it creates this warmth in you that you are actually going through a refinement process.
Right.
Suffering without purpose is sickness. So it's not that a realized person does not fall sick.
Yeah.
Right? A realized person does not feel pain, etc. But because they have this enlightened purpose, this higher purpose, this higher energy, this vision of unconditional love that drives them. So that sickness, that suffering eventually actually becomes a means to self-realize. It becomes part of the process.
Right.
I've said earlier that my definition of virtue and sin is that if you are on the path of self-realization, if you're looking for God and only God, then everything that you do becomes a virtue. Because you're doing it so that you get rid of that craving, you get rid of that hard karma, so that you can free yourself to surrender to the absolute, to divine, to God. Whereas if you are doing even seemingly virtuous actions, but your motive is different. Motive is that, hey, I'm going to go do this charity so that I can put on my Stanford resume that I'm involved in this community work, so as to get my Stanford degree or admission into this in an Ivy League college, then automatically the value of that virtue diminishes. Because virtue is being measured at the absolute level, not at the relative human level. They may grade it differently at the human level, but when you talk about the karmic law, it is looking at the absolute level. It is not looking at what university you're going to.
Right.
An uneducated poet like Kabir can be self-realized, and so could be, Moses, who grew up in this royal family, but his roots were in the slave community who we liberated, versus Dashrath, who was a king of Ayodhya in the Hindu tradition, who was father of Lord Ram. And he was also self-realized, but he was living in a palace. He had all the comforts of a palace, all the responsibility. So realization can come anywhere, because what is you're working towards an absolute yardstick, not the relative yardstick that we humans have created.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I kind of expanded the topic more than the question asked, but this was very important. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say self-realization is the purpose of this creation?
Finding God, finding your creator is the purpose. Yeah, this creation is a big puzzle, and the ultimate outcome of this puzzle is we find God.
Right. And not everyone might realize that purpose in this life, right? And that's where the understanding of reincarnation is so important. We realize that, like, there's a reason we're born into this family, this society, the circumstances that we're born into. It's not just random, but rather our own doing from our past.
Exactly. Understanding the law of karma is very important. If you unlock the law of karma and don't trivialize it, don't trivialize self-realization, there is no need to. If you understand all of that, then your journey becomes more optimized, more efficient. The wastage in your journey, by creating your imaginary ideas about spiritual progress, about different types of meditation, this meditation, that meditation, eventually all these varieties are based on affirmation. If you look at all the mantras, they're asking God for something, right? Asking, if you look at the normal mantras, or prayers, they're asking for health, wealth, happiness, child, job, etc. And then there are higher mantras that are asking for light, knowledge, self-realization, right? Those are the ones that you follow, because everything else shall be added unto you.
Yeah.
Seek ye the kingdom of the Lord first. Everything else will be added unto you. So you go to the top. My guru said, first go straight to the top with your, with the flaps, like the horse has the flap. Go up the top, and then there'll be enough time in your life to collect the goodies.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I did. I didn't read a lot of books. You mentioned that. Yes, I do speak from experience, and that experience flows from my direct perception of the absolute. So apologies if I negate something that might be written in the scripture, but this is my direct experience. Lately, I have started reading, because now, I reached a point where, I was able to read, and I read good literature as well. And sometimes you need these examples, anecdotes. It helps communicate the message, and that is the purpose of the scripture as well.
Yeah.
All the stories that they help us with the communication of this abstract God, right? Which you can experience, but you cannot share in words. And you can say light, and I saw light, and I saw this visual, and I saw the vibration, and I saw so many things, but you can't really experience that. Now, even though a self-realized master can transfer some aspects of their self-realization into somebody else, but that's a very rare occurrence. There's a lot of energy that goes into that. But ultimately, yes, what I speak is through my direct perception. I do take aid of something that I might have read, some vocabulary, some scriptures, but ultimately, if you have found realization, then the knowledge will automatically come to you. It's all around you.
Yeah. And the abundance, the joy that you live in, and the wisdom, it's because of so much hard work, not just this life, but an accumulation of all of your entire journey of your past lives.
Exactly. It's all being collected.
Yeah.
Saint Peter, the guardian of the pearly gates. So traditionally, so in India, we all have surnames, and the surname determines, who you have descended from. So I've descended from, you can call it God or deity named Chitragupt.
Okay.
Chitra means picture, and Gupt means secret. And according to the scriptures, Chitragupt is, collaborates with the god of death. So when we all die, he keeps a detailed account of all the deeds that we have done. And based on the deeds, you get a score.
Yeah.
And based on the score, you go to heaven or hell or realization. So it's similar to what Saint Peter does in the Christian tradition. Chitragupt is when I was growing up, I just knew Chitragupt. Okay, this is the name Saint Peter. But then one day, as I was meditating, the realization came: what does Chitragupt mean? And that's when Chitra means picture, photo, and Gupt means secret. So it's the secret picture that we are taking of our own self. The recording of every action that we do, it gets stored in, lack of a better word, like photons of light and high density photons in our own spine. So we have a record of all that we have done in this life and previous births, about 13 births in our spinal cord. And it keeps replaying. And when we leave this body, all this data in the being, there is a coating of the being of awareness, goes in a seed form in the higher planes, and then it starts manifesting based on whatever was coded in it. And that is the role of Chitragupt.
Wow.
Right? So it's all karma. That's the mechanism of karma.
Yeah.
How it works.
That's amazing. You mentioned it's like everything, our karma is like stored in like these photons of light. I mean, everything is light. The ultraviolet spectrum, I mean, we can only see what 0.0001% of it, but we don't realize that everything is vibration, everything is light. And there's so much behind the scenes, like you said, like everything that we're doing is getting stored in our spine, is determining our future. And at the end, when we die, it's our spiritual reservoir that we're going to take with us, our footprint, but not our money, not our status.
No, everything that is a lower vibrational energy will get behind. And in fact, the other day we were talking about qubits, computers, right? Quantum computers. And, I've not read a lot about them, but the way I understood them was that you are able to we figured out a way to question the universe through these qubits and find an answer.
Right.
And essentially, what are these qubits? They are some sort of storage of intelligence, right? And karma can be, the way karma is stored within us, could be some sort of qubits, right? Which, as you go deep into meditation, you start becoming focused at a certain point, and that little point elaborates into a big visual. Right. Oh, I was this person in this life, and I'm doing this, etc., etc. Sometimes it can be random. Sometimes it can, through the practice of Kriya Yoga, it can be more disciplined. So, essentially, science is coming closer to understanding the spiritual mechanism of karma. You mentioned reincarnation. I mean, reincarnation is very well studied among psychologists. I believe there's some work that has happened in somewhere in Virginia or Maryland, in UVA, on that as well. So eventually, proponents of reincarnation say that the kind of mental diseases we're going to start seeing, or already start seeing, we'll not be able to address them till we understand the karmic law, till we believe in the process of reincarnation.
Right.
Because these cases, when they'll come and people start saying, oh, I have this fear of water, I have fear of fire. And here you can say, oh, some prenatal conditioning or childhood trauma. But now that we have cameras everywhere, now we have records of everybody's history, bit by bit recording of everything. And the patient will say, well, look at my life. Where is this childhood trauma? I had to have come from somewhere else. And then the doctors, the psychologists will be forced to think, well, what is that somewhere else?
Yeah.
And then more data will show up. Oh, there is this person in this particular village or this city, and now they're talking about World War II and the plane that they flew and they're, where they used to live, and their depiction is actually very close to, it's a 7-year-old child, 6-year-old child, and they know exactly where they lived, exact description, and the building still exists. Then when that empirical data would be there, there'll be no denying, right? Unless somebody politically or fanatically says, well, let's suppress this research. That research will come out, and reincarnation very soon.
Yeah.
Maybe before this, before this decade ends, will become an accepted fact.
Yeah.
Right. I've already said the Reiki is the laser of the future. Today we have to take a tumor out, we have to cut the person open, take the tumor in such a primitive way. It does buy time for us. We don't have a better way.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're working with lasers, etc., which kind of reduce the incision or make the surgery less invasive. But then with Reiki, there'll come a time where you'd be able to place your hands and channel the energy that laser is doing, but a more refined energy, and wipe out the tumor.
Wow.
Now, of course, we can't say it in podcast, but there is decent anecdotal evidence within our group where tumors have shrunk after visiting some spiritual places, doing the practice, allergies have gone away, etc. But again, there is no clinical evidence, so we can't make any sorts of claims, and we don't want to make claims because eventually it's your personal practice.
Yeah.
But I personally have seen in my 25 years of practice so many things what you call as miracles, and I've firsthand experienced it with my students. So I can't say I read it in a book.
Yeah.
Right. People have come and told me that they were going through this sickness. Doctors said they had a few months to live, and then they lived for 12 years and they were playing golf in Florida and they died a natural death. Right. How is that happening? Yeah, it could be random, but can't happen with so many groups of people.
Yeah.
And it can't be my own mental projection because I am truly indifferent to that. I am not practicing spirituality because I have to create a miracle or I want, I want the buzz to go around. It is my own path that gives me joy. I practice it, and that's how I encourage people to practice it. And I don't claim that, oh, well, I had this vision and God came to me and told me that this is when the Third World War is going to happen, and this is what, this is the end of the world. I've never made those predictions, even though I've been asked so many times, right?
Me the other day.
And podcasters have said, hey, what's your view on 2012? I say, well, I don't talk about those things. I don't predict people's future unless it's absolutely necessary, something that naturally comes to me. So we are not here to prove anything to anybody.
Yeah.
It is eventually life is also about at a fundamental level sharing experiences. And one such set of experiences is the experience of self-realization, which is what I bring to the table, which is what my group of people bring to the table. And our message is that you can live a very healthy material life. You can be in a very busy corporate modern world and still can be deeply spiritual. And you're not missing out on anything. And the second message is that don't trivialize spirituality, right? This yoga, beer yoga, that yoga, it's all good, but it is at the end of the day, it's entertainment. There is no nutritional value of that. Mm-hmm. When you grow old and you have done so many different practices, you will, you'll look at pictures, you'll feel happy, but then you'll also realize that real transformation did not come. I did not make that direct contact that I wanted.
Yeah.
That continuous flow of love, continuous flow of realization. I could not see the karmic law at work. I know I can manifest through my thought, but I was not able to have the first-hand experience to manifest thought into reality. Why? Because there's so much karmic backlog.
Yeah.
So eventually, if you look at, advanced initiates in our group, their thought has become so powerful that when they start thinking, things start manifesting. And thought has also become so restrained, so controlled that they don't think about random things, right? So ultimately, it's meditation or spirituality is an experiment where you yourself are the subject of that experiment.
And the scientist.
And the scientist, and the apparatus is your body and your mind.
Yeah.
So you're the apparatus as well.
And the subject.
And the subject, right? And eventually, and you set the standards also.
Yep.
So you are the assessing committee as well. And you can go out and speak anything. It's an unregulated industry. But ultimately, it's you who you are talking about. And you get the taste of your own medicine. So just choose carefully. In fact, self-realization, ultimate goal of self-realization is called Kaivalya. Kaivalya means unsupported existence, unity, or other words, knowledge of everything about everything. It's called Kaivalya. So ultimately, this is what the experiment will result in.
Yeah.
And, and that is what is called self-realization, because knowledge of everything about everything is ultimately direct contact with God.
Yeah. And, self-realization is also God realization, because ultimately we come from God, that God is within us. So as we realize ourselves, who are we? Why are we here? What are we made of? We automatically, inherently understand God. And then as we understand God, we understand everything. As
yes,
you said.
Exactly.
Kaivalya.
Kaivalya. Unsupported, isolated existence, full of bliss, full of joy, full of awareness. That's Kaivalya. Okay, with that, we can end.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Shailesh, for your pure wisdom and for taking the time to share all of your thoughts and words and vibrations with us. Very grateful for your time and presence.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a divine joy and it's a divine blessing. So we are just channels. Oh.
Wow. I hope you guys are as amazed by that conversation as I am. I hope it triggered something within you to spark that curiosity of getting to know your true self. I encourage you to stay curious, to realizing who you truly are, to question what is actually going on within you, to look for something beyond what meets the eye. Who else will truly know your true self other than yourself? How can we expect our family, our friends, our partners to know us when we don't even completely truly know ourselves? How do we expect to understand others around us when we don't know our true self? Right? So understanding our true self really increases our capacity, increases our capabilities of understanding the world around us. It increases our capacity of unconditional love and acceptance. It gives us clarity on where do we want to go in life? What are the next steps that we want to take? It gives us unlimited willpower. It gives us intuition. It gives us so much wisdom, all by knowing our true self. So I challenge you to stay curious, to stay empowered, and to exercise that willpower to find the answers for yourself by self-studying. Thank you all for sharing this time and space. I am so grateful for you. Feel free to like and subscribe to this podcast if you would like to support this channel. This is Wakeful Being signing off.